Booktube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March. It's been a rough week. It's been a really hard reading week. It's been a week all around. Before I even talk about books, I'm just going to say one thing. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. I'm a very emotional person, and typically throughout the entire last year, books have been kind of a safe haven and kind of a comfort to go back to. This past week is the first week that I've just not been able to keep my attention on any one thing. And I did finish some books, but two of them are middle grade. And when I can't seem to focus on a book meant for my age bracket, I tend to go for middle grade or something just more pleasant. That may have backfired on me a little bit, and you'll see why. I'm going to link a video below from Brian at Bookish, who posted a commentary this morning about the political debacle that happened in this previous week. The insurrection, the terrorist insurrection at our nation's capital, the deaths of 5 people, which were a direct outcome of our current president fomenting white nationalist, terrorist ideals, conspiracy theories, and bold-faced lies. It's very difficult to wrap my brain around what's happening in our country. And I feel a deep sense of shame and disgust and anger at what I see having been done in the last 4 years. And I look back and I continue to wonder, for those career politicians that have a position of power, if you will remain in the Senate or the House, how will you sleep at night? What will you say to the new Democratic administration in both the House and the Senate? What will you do on a daily basis, and how will you interact with your colleagues? How will you think of what happened to the American people? What is going to be your attitudes towards future policy making for this country? The only thing that is what I'm relying on is hope, and I'm trying to hold on to that. I believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will bring back some dignity to our American leadership and administration. I believe that as imperfect as every politician is, as imperfect or any mistakes that either Biden or Harris will make, that's okay, because they will bring a sense of service, class, dignity, and determination to help repair what's been broken by the previous leader, quote unquote, leader of this country. So I'm trying to look forward and I'm trying to be hopeful, but it's been tough. And for any of my international Booktube friends or viewers, again, I've said this before in previous videos, thank you for your support and your words and your positive thoughts coming our way. So, that's it. That's all I'm going to say. I tend to get sucked into the vortex of Facebook videos of laughing babies and cute animals and John Bon Jovi. So that's what I've been binging myself on. I finished Bridgerton. I don't know what to do with myself now. I'm going back to The Crown. I'm watching season 3, which I stopped at the end of season 2, and I have to get caught up. My daughter and I are binge watching The Office every day. And I'm trying to watch fun things. I'm paying lots of attention to Booktube and trying to read what I can. So let me share what I did finish last week. I finished the second portion of These Truths. This portion ended in 1845. And so it's January is our next section. It's the third of 4 quarters. And typically what I've been doing is the very first month of the quarter for these truths read along is I pick it apart a little bit at a time. And then the second and third quarters, I usually ramp it up. So I'm not going to read too heavily in this month of January. And I'm also trying to figure out which additional fiction and nonfiction book I'm going to read for this third quarter, this next section. One of the books I did finish is Be Free or Die, The Amazing Story of Robert Small's Escape from Slavery to Union Hero by Kate Lineberry. Let's see. I gave this book 3 stars. It's a fascinating story, and it's a fascinating moment in history for the Union and Confederate military history, the Civil War, but I'm not quite sure it was written in a way that tied it together. And to be honest, without being insulting to the event that Robert Smalls was able to succeed in, I don't think there's enough of his history to write an entire book about it, because I think the author tried to add additional historical facts and details while giving pieces of his life, his beginnings in slavery. He was a man born into slavery. And at the age of 23, he stole and piloted a Confederate steamship along with a few other escaped slaves who were determined to escape to freedom, and their families. And so he succeeded in getting this steamer to the Union Army and was successfully brought to freedom. And then the author discusses the events that happened after that event, how he and his family endured that whole voyage to try to reach the Union Army before being discovered. It talks about how his family survived and lived in the aftermath of that. So those are really interesting things. It also talks about what Robert Smalls went on to do, and he did enter politics. It talks a lot about the continued racism, even in the North, especially in Philadelphia and other northern cities that escaped slaves endured. It discusses different battles through the Union and Confederate armies and navies. It discusses Robert's career in shipping and in the military, talks about how he succeeded financially by surrendering this Confederate steamer to the Union Army. He was paid for that. And there's detail about his future and politics. But there wasn't enough to create this entire book based on Robert Smalls, the person. There's a lot of battle history and battle facts. I've never been a fan of that. I'm not really interested in the details of the battles. I'm more interested in the personal narratives. But it was a very good story. I just wasn't crazy about how it was put together in the writing of it. So, last week, I asked my middle schooler, you got to give me some good books to read, because I was just not able to concentrate on anything else. And the first one I picked up is, she shoved this in my hand and she's like, Mom, you have to read this. And this is Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman. And there's all kinds of illustrations and a lot of, this took me maybe a couple of hours to read. This tells the mythical tale of a dad and his 2 kids. They're out of milk, and they want cereal for breakfast. So he says, well, and this is kind of almost like the forgetful professor kind of guy who was at the store just the other day and just did not buy the milk. So they want their cereal, and he says, I'll go out to the corner shop and pick up the milk. And in the process, he gets sucked into an alien spaceship and opens the door to try to escape the aliens because their intention is to kidnap him. And he enters a time-space vortex where he meets all of these mythical creatures, a talking stegosaurus who is a professor, and they keep going back and forth into different doors that enter into different periods in time. And he gets thousands of years away from his 2 kids waiting for him to bring the milk back from the corner store. It was really cute, but I am not a Neil Gaiman fan, and this kind of solidified that for me. The story was just weird and silly without being cohesive without, I don't know, without like meaning anything. And it was just, I think he just added a lot of these different crazy characters to be original and unique. And I didn't really understand the point of why this would have been tied in with a dad forgetting to buy milk. In the end of the story, I'm going to give you a spoiler because it's a younger age, middle grade book. At the end of the book, he does come back with the milk, which he has carried with him through time and space. And he's telling his kids this story of his adventures, and they start to realize it's all made up and it's based on their artwork around the house and their toys and the books that they're interested in. And he kind of just went from there. It was a little silly, but it helped me read a book, and that's about it. Now this one, I could not read this at night because it was so disturbing and heartbreaking. But it's another middle grade novel, and it's called Refugee. This is based on true accounts of 3 different children as different countries' refugees. It was written by Alan Gratz. It was published in very recently because Trump's name makes an appearance. This was published in 2017. It's 3 stories, 3 interconnected stories of 3 different refugees. Joseph is a Jewish boy in 1939. Isabel is a Cuban girl in 1994, I believe. And Mahmoud is a Syrian boy in 2014, 2015. Their stories are quite different, but they're all linked in some way, but we don't find that out until the end of each of their sections. And it kind of goes in order. The book starts off with Joseph, goes to Isabel's story, and then Mahmoud's. So Joseph and his family are fleeing Germany immediately before World War II breaks out, and once Hitler has gained power. Their father, Joseph's father, has been arrested and ends up in a concentration camp for 6 months, where he is tortured and beaten and witnesses different atrocities. He's released and he's commanded, don't ever come back to Germany again. So he and his family embark on a cruise ship called the St. Louis, heading for Cuba, and they hope to get asylum in Cuba. Isabel's story is, she is a Cuban girl during the reign of Fidel Castro, at a time when he allowed Cubans to leave the country without fear of arrest. So she and her family board this very small boat with a slapdash motor meant to go to Miami. They ending up in the Bahamas instead because of getting off course. Their motor fails. There's different things that happen to them out in the middle of the ocean. And they're turned away from the Bahamas and try to make it to Miami. The last story is Mahmoud, who's a Syrian boy in the middle of Aleppo. And it talks about his family's experiences living in basically a war zone in the middle of the city. Their apartment building, their home, is destroyed by a missile, and they flee. The father, his mother, and his brother, with the baby sister, flee Aleppo, and they are determined to make it to Austria. Each of the stories details the events along the way, and they are so harrowing, so heartbreaking, that it's very difficult to read. And all of their stories are based on true stories and people that survived during these periods in history. And it basically just magnifies the state of refugee people trying to escape persecution, trying to escape war, fear of death, starvation, anything that's happening in their home countries. And they're just trying to find a better life where they can just survive and hopefully thrive in a different place around the world. It talks about countries that refuse them. It talks about where Joseph and his family end up on a cruise ship with over 900 other Jewish people bound for Cuba. They are turned away. And it talks about what happens to their family when they are sent back to Europe. It's just a harrowing book. It was overwhelmingly heartbreaking. And it took me more days than I expected for me to read it and finish it because it was so sad. And very emotional. At the end of the book, the author offers some notes where he relays the stories of the real people that many of these stories are based on. And it just brings that even more to home as to what refugees experience around the world. It's a very good book. So that's what I finished this past week. I do have some plans to hopefully read Wide Sargasso Sea this weekend. I just received this particular copy after about a month of waiting for it to come by book mail. It is this wonderful green spine Penguin classic. The print is much easier to read than the Norton Critical Edition that I still have. So I want to try to finish this book this weekend and do a review of Jane Eyre and Wide Sargasso Sea. So far that's my only plan, my only book on my TBR. I might, I'm not sure if I'll get to it this weekend, but I have a in real life book club book to read. I have my Barter Hordes book club book to read. I have the Jewish Odyssey of George Eliot to read. What else? I could start on my Thomas Cromwell biography. So I got plenty of things on the go. The last thing I want to say is God bless America, because we surely need it. I hope you all have been safe and healthy this past week. Thank you very much for watching. Write a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.